In the midst of my 2-year life and death battle, I had enough faith in God, probably a mustard seed or half of that, to ask my mom to take my picture when I was at my worst. I was miserable, I was hopeless, but I still had faith. I committed to whatever helped me get well, I would spend the rest of my life sharing that with the world.
Welcome to the Experience Miracles podcast, where we help parents find hope, answers, and drug-free help to overcome your child's chronic health challenges. I'm your host, Dr. Tony Ebel, and I'll be sharing my experiences as both a dad and a doctor on every episode. I can take the latest science and neurology of healing and break it down in the most simple and relatable way possible. We'll take on the toughest topics and answer your biggest questions through interviews with other amazing parents and leading experts, leaving you with practical action steps that you can take to help your child heal and thrive. It's time to expect and experience miracles. Let's get started. All right, moms and dads, I am so excited to bring today's guest interview to you. Jordan Rubin is going to help your family in so many ways. Just get healthy and restore healthy naturally. If your kiddos are sick and struggling and you're looking for that road to go down, or maybe we caught you and you're already a rockin' healthy family, wellness, natural living, regenerative, agriculture loving family. If that's you, you'll love this too. Jordan Rubin is one of America's most recognized and respected natural health experts in the last quarter century. Jordan is the founder of Garden of Life, Beyond Organic, and Ancient Nutrition, and the New York Times best-selling author of The Maker's Diet and 29 additional titles, including his latest work, The Probiotic Diet, with millions of copies in print worldwide. He is an authority on regenerative agriculture and sustainable farming practices, and Jordan has developed thousands of acres of regenerative organic land, including the first regenerative organic certified farms in Tennessee and Missouri. This man is a wealth of knowledge. We are going to jam-pack this episode all the way full. You're going to get so much out of it. Every time I learn from Jordan, every time I get to hang out and see him speak and just be around him, life gets better. I get more inspired to live a healthier, natural life with my family, but I also get more action steps. I get more strategies because this man, 29 books and counting, 3 massive companies and counting. He's just done so many things that are now proven to help people, help families get healthy. So can't wait to dig in. You're going to love this one. Let's get started with Jordan Rubin. All right, Jordan, we are so excited for this one. I don't know if it's officially in the intro, but as we were just talking before we got rolling, I would love to not only help families have such an incredible future with natural health, learning about regenerative agriculture and all that we can share there, but I think we should definitely set the record for best and most dad jokes. And we can go for both quantity and quality of dad jokes here, because I love learning from you, from the information I get from you. But every time I've heard you talk, I just have such a joyful time learning too, because your dad, whether your kids know it yet or not, your dad jokes are legendary. So going back prior to dad life, I know is where this health journey started for you. So if you could you kick us off by sharing your personal story and how that impacted your life and became that spark that God sent you to? Because I mean, when we go through the companies and we go through the books, like that's a lot, buddy. That's a lot of really big stuff, really, really big stuff that you've gone forward and accomplished and still are getting after it every single day. So there must have been a real big spark to get that started. Can you share with us what that was?
Yes, and before I do, Tony, you'll appreciate this. So I grew up as a kid of hippie health nut parents. So we're talking about the 70s, early 80s. My dad was a naturopathic student at what is now National University in Oregon, was the National College of Naturopathic Medicine. Then he went to New York Chiropractic and then finished at Life. And I was one of the only kids of the students. So I was an adjusting dummy. So for whatever it's worth, I would be practiced upon time and time again. And also growing up in the natural health movement in the 70s, the food was absolutely awful. My parents started 2 co-ops, one in Oregon, one in Georgia. You're probably familiar with Life Grocery if you've ever been in that area. It was affiliated with Life University at one point, but my parents would stock the brewer's yeast kelp soy, and wheat germ, multiple different ways. They were plant-based, which I'm pretty disappointed by, although they allowed me to have some goat milk and carrot juice as a supplement to the formula, or excuse me, breastfeeding. And growing up as a hippie health nut kid was really embarrassing. So think of Lunchables, the onset of Lunchables, and everybody's opening theirs up and trading their lunches. And I had what I would call the untradeable lunch. We're talking about tofu-based bologna, fakin bacon, which sounds as bad as it is. And I would have that mayonnaise and some kind of 17 grain bread. And it was just awful. Like I'd literally open up my lunch and I'd sort of hunch down. My parents were the ones that gave away Sprouts at Halloween. And here's what I remember very vividly, that the number one health lie that is told by health nut parents to kids back in the 70s and 80s is carob tastes just as good as chocolate. It is absolutely not true. The good news now, Tony, is people think chocolate's healthy, so we don't have to go for the carob Santa Claus, which made you glad that Christmas only came once a year. So I grew up in this generally healthy home, chiropractic, naturopathy, didn't see doctors very much, born at home, not vaccinated, the whole shebang. Except when I was 16 years old, there was a, quote, measles epidemic in my school, which was one person with measles, it turned out. And they offered me a vaccine called MMR. I didn't know what that was at the time. We have so much reference for it now. And my dad said, Jordan, take the suspension from school. It would have been a 3-week suspension if I didn't get vaccinated. He said, it's not wise, but I'm not going to force you. And so I got the vaccine, which was my only vaccine still to date. And I don't know how much that played a role, or my college diet that slipped quite a bit into my subsequent illness. But I developed severe Crohn's colitis. I had diabetes. I had parasitic bacterial fungal viral infection. I had prostate and kidney infections. 19 diagnosed illnesses. Took me from 185 pounds at 6 feet tall to 104 pounds in a wheelchair. And you all may be able to put up what I call my before picture, which is a photograph that in the midst of my 2-year life and death battle, I had enough faith in God, probably a mustard seed or half of that, to ask my mom to take my picture when I was at my worst. And there are moments in life, Tony, that you look back and literally praise God that you had that supernatural faith, because I didn't smile. I didn't laugh. I was in the bathroom 18 to 30 times a day with bloody diarrhea. I felt like I had surgery being done to my gut without anesthesia. I was embarrassed to tell my friends about the latest doctor I was going to, because I visited 70. I was taken care of like an infant in my parents' home and with my grandmother, hospitalized multiple times, conventional medicine failed, traveled the world for alternatives. And ultimately that photograph, that profession of faith, I like to say that that's a Hebrews 11:1 photograph. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And if you say you have faith and sit there and do nothing, God calls that, well, nothing. Because faith without works is dead. And even though I could barely walk without fainting, I had a 0 ferritin level, which is 0 stored iron in my blood, and corpses have more than I do. I was miserable. I was hopeless, but I still had faith. And that photograph, which was before Photoshop and digital, became my most prized possession, because my mom didn't want to take the picture, but I said, Mom, you need to take this picture because the world's not going to believe what God's about to do in my life. And I would love to tell people who are listening, who are suffering with an illness, or a child who's sick, or financial challenges, or a marriage that's on the rocks. I'd love to tell you that I woke up well the next day, but I didn't. Days turned into weeks, turned into months. But about a year later, I met a man who told me that I could be well if I followed a health plan from the Bible. Now, I had already committed, once I knew my illness was not a cold or a flu or a week-long issue, I committed to whatever helped me get well, I would spend the rest of my life sharing that with the world. I already committed that. I knew that I wasn't the only one sick. I knew that illness is the worst thing that could happen to you physically on the planet. And I made that commitment. And I'm really glad that Venus flytrap IV infusions in Germany didn't help me, or the cage I built around my bed to prevent satellite radiation from a satellite that orbits the Earth once every 70 years. You know, when the doctor told me that was the key to my illness, I thought I'd rather have gluten or dairy sensitivity. You know what I mean? Like, that's a little rough right there. I drank a potion one time from two people that didn't speak English. I assumed they were Spanish or Latin until the son of the father herbalist showed me pictures of their trips to Mars. This is a true story. Well, it's not a true story that they visited Mars, but it's a true story that they gave me an unlabeled beverage that I consumed, and they said they traveled to other planets. This is the epitome of desperate times equals desperate measures. So this man from San Diego, and I lived in South Florida, told me if I followed a biblical diet, I'd be well. And something happened. I gained hope. He told me, if you will move to San Diego and live with me, in 90 days, you'll be working out on the beach. He infused faith into me. I remember he was on the West Coast, and I was so excited to talk to him that I would call him up at 8 o'clock my time, 5 o'clock his time. And his words meant so much. So I went to San Diego in a wheelchair. And in a 40-day period, following what I would call a real food diet that I would later write about in my book, The Maker's Diet, I went from life to death, 129 pounds to 111 pounds to 150 something. I remember my parents coming off of the airplane to visit me, and my dad hugged me, and his comment, which was interesting, was, "There's so much of you to hug." I left in a wheelchair, but I came back to Florida not only healthy, and if you have a picture of me standing in front of the beach on my 21st birthday, 170 pounds, working out on the beach exactly like this man named Bud Keith told me, that was my after picture. And I came back to Florida with a passion to see the health of God's people transformed one life at a time. I was 21, started working at a health food store, espousing all of what I'd learned, sharing my testimony with a photocopy of my before picture, always eager to help someone who is desperate, because you don't realize this, but health food stores, along with certainly chiropractic offices, naturopathic offices, acupuncture offices, they're lined with desperate, semi-hopeless people that have been told by their doctors there's no cure. They've been told by WebMD they're going to die. And while they don't wear it on their sleeve or on their hat, they need that hope. And the Bible says that we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony, or the power of our testimony. So thank you for letting me share mine. The story didn't end there, even though I got well and began starting companies and writing books. I ended up in 2008 being diagnosed with cancer. And by the way, I wrote a book on natural cancer healing. So this was extremely unexpected. It was based on a surgical procedure my dad opted against when I was born. And that led to a 1,000-fold increase in the type of cancer that would ultimately be, quote unquote, terminal, 100% chance I would die in 90 days if I didn't get chemo and surgery. I didn't. God gave me some wisdom and some great resources, and through the power of prayer, forgiveness, detoxification, and nutrition, God healed me of metastatic cancer. And even though I haven't written books on it yet, I'm going to. But if anyone's watching and desperate for some kind of hope from autoimmune disease or cancer, there's a video called "To Hell with Cancer" of a message I preached in California 10 years ago. So you can maybe put the link up there, Dr. Tony. It's great. It's not a physical health message. It's about how to conquer your greatest challenges, really becoming more than a conqueror. And I will write a book one day called "To Hell with Cancer," because I believe the disease is demonic. And like your shirt says, if you are a child of God and follow his plan with cancer, with Crohn's disease, with multiple sclerosis, you can expect miracles by aligning with his purpose and plan. Deep
Yes,
breath.
sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Deep breath and let's keep rolling. This is exactly what my team and I was dreaming and praying we would get into. And I love that we are immediately from the jump, from the origin story into it, because every bit of this, I'm sure the team, the producer team listening in is just smiling and so excited for me to be able to be in this conversation with you. And then so most excited for everyone who tunes into the Experience Miracles podcast to be in this conversation with us, because here's what we're talking about. This is to the T what we wanted to bring to this world through this podcast and our PX Talks platform, that healing begins with hope being held on to. Healing begins foundationally with faith being found, being fostered, being galvanized, being grasped onto, and then put into action. What I love there, Jordan, is you told us that the way you healed was a combination of things. It wasn't just faith alone. It was God saying, hey, you are rewarded for maintaining faith and leaning into it. And here's the actions. Here's the humans. Here's the relationships. Here's the connections. Here's the wisdom. It was the things put together. But the one thing that we love teaching so much, Jordan, is the sequence of healing, the flow chart, if you will, to really simplify it, that says, okay, there's foundational strategies within neurophysiology. There's foundational strategies within science that conventional medicine does not know. So they definitely don't do. And natural health, chiropractic, nervous system health, we, in a scientific conversation and a neurophysiological conversation, which you and I can definitely, put our nerd hats on and go down that road as well and do those. There is a sequence to that. But in the same breath, there is actually something even more foundational to healing than that. And that is our faith. That is our hope. Our tagline is, oh my goodness, is this just so very essential to the work we do. It is hope, answers, and drug-free action steps. So it's three separate phrases and words, but to us, just blur all those letters together. That's actually one thing. To us, it's not that any one of them individual isn't incredible and essential, but it's really the combination through which healing happens. And that's what parents are searching for. As hope dwindles, you better believe you find yourself into a chiropractic office. As hope dwindles, you find yourself on Google, on YouTube, into podcasts, and you're looking for the Tonys and the Jordans and the Joshes of the world to say, okay, I know somebody out there has answers. I know somebody out there has healing action steps I can get to, but we need to capture your faith first. We need to refuel your hope first. That is where healing begins. And I'll be done with my response on this one in a second, but we still do, and a little bit of used to, and I'll explain that here as I go into it. We used to, with a little bit of still do, describe our practice as welcome to the last resort. Now, when I began practice 15, 16 years ago, there wasn't as much Google and Facebook and Instagram and podcasts, none of this stuff that we now lean into as families and parents to help our kids heal. It literally just didn't exist. So it was a huge divide between families who had been given up on and failed by conventional medication and pharmaceuticals and all the things. And so when they came over to PWC, when they came over to pediatric chiropractic, they were literally hanging on to their last hope. One mom literally said this phrase to me, and I'll never forget it. I can physically feel like I'm in that room right now. She was sitting there with her kiddo, sensory spectrum, recently diagnosed kiddo. And in our world, once a child gets with autism, gets that diagnosis of autism, medical traditionalists just write them off. That's all you can do. There is no healing, and fill in the blank with that, cancer to so many things. And she, literally kind of like with her hand, while she was calming and squeezing and deep hugging her sensory kiddo who was stressed, she said, I'm here with my last hope card. And that conversation for her, by the way, it took me many, many minutes before I started talking about the vagus nerve and the gut-brain connection and science. She didn't need that information from me in that moment. She just needed to know that I 1000% believed in her ability to lead her child down the road of healing, and that God had led her to our office for that very reason, and that it wasn't important to get to work on the things, on the actions, until we absolutely made that connection to God's will and his wisdom to send us in this direction, faith with action. Now, what I want to pull a thread on there, sir, hoofta, that is incredible. This is what we want to talk about the whole time. You were infused with faith while your health was crumbling and deteriorating. So if we can go back prior to, I know on your investigation, you've looked at it and said, okay, was it the 16-year-old MMR? Was it this? Was it college diet? Those things. That's the stuff that maybe sparked the bad. I actually want to pull the thread on what your parents did. Yeah, that's a weird way to say it, but what did your parents foster, and what were some of even the strategies that you could recant going from through your childhood where they built your faith? Because to hang on to it, you had to have it in the first place. So for raising healthy kids naturally and being prepared for healing, because, this is biblical as can be, many of us, most of us and our kids included, we're going to face a storm. We're going to go into one, right? And a challenge and a crisis. And how we go in has a lot to do with how we come out. And so faith development, I'll ask it that way. Prior to your illness, what were some things that you remember growing up as a kiddo that built your faith? And let's talk about that for a couple minutes more, separate from, hey, how you learned natural health and chiropractic. We'll get into that. But how was your faith developed?
Well, I am the son of two Jewish parents. So my nuclear family is the only of our entire extended family that are believers in Jesus or Yeshua. So when I was 2 years old, my parents kind of left the New Age movement and became believers. So I grew up a little confused, Jewish, Christian. Just think of any path, and I always go the opposite way, no matter what it is. I'm a Jewish Christian who eats health foods and more. However, my family was not faith-filled. They had faith in Jesus, but a lot of times very ethnic families can be extremely negative. And I remember even though the Jewish people are the chosen people of God, anytime anything good happened, my grandmothers would have this sort of saying, kinahura poo-poo, which is like you spit over your shoulder. It's all this, superstitious, like knock on wood type stuff. Really, really negative. And so I learned and built my faith starting when I was a teenager. I went to a local church and I learned what a relationship with Jesus was versus a religion. Now, I did feel his presence as a child. I know that now, and there's other things that I could point to. But my dad is a very, unfortunately, negative person by his nature. He battles that, doesn't always win. And so I did not grow up with a parental example of faith. Now, I have certainly tried to change that with my children and speaking to them about how important it is what they say, what they think, what they believe. I truly believe death and life is in the power of the tongue. I truly believe that out of the overflow of the mouth, the heart speaks. I truly believe that as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. But I didn't have that modeled in my family, but there were mentors of mine. I remember I'll call him a Sunday school teacher. He was a mentor in church. And every day before my senior year of high school, I would drive to his home and I would pray with him, a friend of mine, and another friend of his. Every morning, senior year, when most people are trying to sleep in or thinking about the party over the weekend, I was surrounded by a peer group that loved God, and that was really a time where I was on fire for him. So that was amazing. And what's really cool, Tony, is my 19-year-old son, Joshua, is now mentored and trained by the son of my mentor, who is a 10-year NFL football veteran, NFL network exec. But it's just amazing. And I actually was in California at our natural products industry's largest trade show. And I took my son, who's a freshman college football player in Alabama, with me to the trade show because spring break aligned well. And we went to Gold's Gym, the mecca of bodybuilding in Venice, to work out with Heath Evans, who's a former NFL player, and Mike O'Hearn, who's an all-time bodybuilding legend. And yes. I sent a picture of Heath and my son to Brian Evans, who is my mentor that I was referring to, who infused faith and scripture into my life. And I said, generational blessings. And it's really cool how God ordains relationships. So my relationship with my dad was not good growing up. He wasn't a man filled with faith, although my parents pointed me to the faith. I wish I could share differently, but God made up for it with pastors, youth pastors, and mentors. And but I will say this, Tony, this is something that I haven't shared very often, and it's something that I get excited about with the mastermind that we're both now a part of, Josh's mastermind at Leaders. I wanted a mentor so badly when I started my business. I basically started Garden of Life, which became a $500 million company, out of my parents' friend's garage with my dad's credit card and a dream. And since I was always the youngest guy in the room, 22, 23, 24 as a CEO, I wanted a mentor so badly, never found one. But I made a commitment that even though no one would endorse my books and I couldn't find anyone to mentor me, that I would look to do that to others prior to having children. And it's great, Tony. That's how I met Josh, because Josh was a hungry young chiropractor who wanted to change the world. And he believed, based on some teachings of John Maxwell and others, that if you want to learn from somebody, you go sit on their doorstep until they let you do that. Well, in his case, we were connected by a friend. He called me, asked if he could come visit me in Florida, asked if he could stay at my home, and then didn't ask and ate all my food. So like that's the bachelor Josh that
Come on.
He has more decorum now that he's married and a father. But so the point is, a lot of what I've done in my life, Tony, is try to help others be what I couldn't. So if I made mistakes in business or in authorship or in relationships or in health, I want to be the mentor to somebody else that I didn't have, so they don't have to go through what I went through. And that's, people call it paying it forward. I call it, to whom much is given, much is expected or required.
Yeah, it is. So in our dining room here, I'm recording from the Farm Sweet Farm, we call it, this place that God gave us here, Iowa farm boy, and moved over here to the Chicago land and suburbs and all of that. It's been wonderful. My wife's amazing family is here. And, as soon as we could, it's like, okay, we're getting out, I'm going to reclaim a little piece of that farm life right here and do that. But in our dining room is exactly that. To whom much is given, much is required. And that was, without any shadow of a doubt, you mentioned it earlier, when you were going through your health hardship, that you said you had committed to God. You said, okay, I know you're going to get me through this. I know you're going to send me the connections, the relations, the actions that are going to get me through this. And when that occurs, I will help others. And you said this, one life at a time. The other, I mentioned our tagline here with that. And again, tagline is, for us, the way we operate, same as you with your companies and the people that you've brought into them. It's not something for the website, not at all. It is something for every moment of our life, with everything we do, to get this to every kid in every family. So our hashtag, if we'll digitize this current life we live in 2024. We've kind of hashtagged our spirit, and it says every kid counts. Every podcast, every DM, every share, every chiropractor I can train, there is one singular kid on the other end of that message or that training or that connection and that relationship. And so mentorship is something for us, because in that, for us, every chiro counts. Every single PX doctor we can get on the directory, everybody we can get trained and get ready for these families. It's just, that's how we add this up, is truly one at a time. And when Oliver was there in the NICU, and I think you're a little familiar with this story. The audience is, it's one of the earlier podcast episodes. So if you're listening to this, I won't go all the way into it on this one, but you can kind of scroll up, or however that would be in podcast land, to find those early episodes to Oliver's story. But 6 weeks in the NICU, I feel like, the amount of sleep we had that 6 weeks might have added up to 6 hours, in that time. And so there was a lot of time awake, researching, yes, because I'm a science guy, but the only time amount that outpaced my research time in learning about neurological regeneration and oxygenation and, everything I now teach, the time I spent outpointed that was praying. And it was exactly that prayer. Dear Lord, when, not if, Dear Lord, when you pull Oliver through this and you give me the skills, the adjustments, the relationships, I'm going to go there next to mentors that get him through to the other side of this storm. I promise you I will. And this is my way, Jordan. This is how God made me, Tony the Talker. I just said, I'll never shut up about it. I remember thinking that. I will never not, and I got to move myself into books and move these things, but I will never not, pay it forward because you gave us Oliver, you gave us this gift, and now we have this podcast, and now we have all the things that are gifts from God to get this gift, to get this relationship to other families. And the part about mentorship that I want to merge into families listening out there, how is this what is now this foundational component of healing for your child and for you in this, right? We heal together as families. We do not heal separate. In fact, if you try and heal separately, you will limit the individual healing. It is really a collective journey. And when I say collective journey, it's actually 100%. The doctors you bring onto your team, they need to have a bit of that mentorship role too. And they definitely need to connect you to community. And so, you'll love this, Jordan. We just got done teaching a couple of weekends ago. I live these 3 different professional lives. I've got my clinic and see patients in there. I'm 2 days a week, and I take on the intensive cases. I take on us, right? And Oliver, I take on kids that are coming over from all over the world and see those cases that medicine has definitely given up on. And then I teach other chiropractors, and we have our training and certification programs. And then I create content to reach families. And so we got done with this 20-hour certification seminar, and this really great doctor, really sarcastic buddy of mine, at every one of our seminars, we have a whole load of these little gluten-free Rosie's. Well, shout out to Rosie's Bakery here in Crystal Lake. These gluten-free scones and friands, right? And they are unbelievably good. Like, you eat one and all of a sudden you're like, I'll have 44 more. And the guy told me, he said, if it was a gluten-free friand eating contest for how many, or if they were required to have one every time I mentioned a mentor's name that taught me what I was teaching them, he goes, I would be 40 pounds heavier, one gluten-free scone at a time. So long, Tony-winded way of saying mentorship is everything. And the kids and families that we see heal and respond to the things we do chiropractically and naturally healed the fastest and the mostest are the ones most connected to their faith, and they are the ones most connected to a community, and they are the ones most connected to other parents and kids who have made it through the storm already. It's a very strategic plan of ours to build community around our practice. So when these new intensives come, they don't just meet us, the providers and the care advocates that are there to build community around them. We very intentionally match them up with 2 or 3 other families who have gotten to the other side, right? And that one little thing that's on our procedure printout of how we take care of patients, that thing should be dipped in gold, because once they know that there's other kids and other families who have been where they are and gotten to where they want to go, that bond is indescribable and invaluable as well. So parents out there, I want you to know, as you listen to this podcast and you connect to the PX Talks platform, we are not just here to talk about vagus nerve and probiotics, and we can, and we'll go there next, Jordan. But we are here to connect you to that community, to that mentor, to that doctor that you need to have the foundational healing. So how do you foster? We got into how we foster. So I know for you right now, then you just shared an incredible story there in California. What an amazing thing. For your kiddos, okay, if I'm going to foster faith in them, it can't just be me and my wife. I've got to get them connected to mentors and others. So we can take that. What about health? Let's jump from that to health, which to us, those are 2 crucial train tracks to bring our kids down. How do you foster the belief in their body to heal, that God designed it that way? How do you prepare your kiddos to not only take action towards building health every single day, but how do you prepare them to say, hey, we want to build such health, build such resilience, build such good, healthy habits that if you do face your health crisis, you're prepared for it? So I know that's a big question. So maybe kind of start 30,000 foot view and we can get a little more granular. How do you build healthy habits, healthy mindset, I would even call it, within your kiddos?
Well, First of all, I forgot to mention this, Tony. I didn't know you were in Crystal Lake. So I've actually lectured there at, I want to say it's the Crystal Lake Community Center. So it was like bingo in one room, and it was me. It was a little health food store called Crystal Lake Health Foods.
Yes, one of our CAs, Laura, grew up working there. That's how she found her health journey, and she owns it. One of our team members is the owner of Crystal Lake Health Food Store. Yeah.
And they ordered Garden of Life products literally since the late '90s. So Crystal Lake Health Food. So it's a little ways outside of Chicago. You know, when I was growing up, I made some jokes about how bad health foods were. The truth is, I ate healthy in the house, but when I went to friends' houses, I ate whatever they had. I didn't own it. I followed in my home what my parents recommended, which, looking back, was very wanting. And I determined that I would make health a priority, but I needed my kids to own it. And so just a little bit about my story as a parent perspective. I have a biological son who's 19. I have 5 adopted children, 11-year-old daughter, 16-year-old daughter, 16-year-old son, 20-year-old daughter, 26-year-old son. They came to us at all different ages, from 16, my oldest, to 2 days old, my 16-year-old daughter. Now, we eat exceptionally healthy. And I listen to a lot of podcasts, Tony. I'm not trying to be critical, but a lot of health experts say, well, I don't force my kids to eat healthy. They eat fast food occasionally. They eat this, that, and the other. This is going to sound like bragging, but it's a value to me. Since my kids have been in my home, whether born into it or brought into, they have never eaten fast food once. My kids have never eaten McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's. My kids have never had a medicine. My son, who is 19, plays football, and he fractured his radius and ulna when he was 10. So he had to, and it was displaced. So he had anesthesia via gas, which is very unfortunate, but that's the closest thing. Not an aspirin, not an antibiotic, not a hospitalization, praise God. So that I've been able to control to an extent. Obviously, you can't control accidents. I will say we pray Psalm 91 together as a family every day that we can together at dinner. And I have since I was 19 years old. So that's probably our best insurance policy. Now, my 4 younger kids from age 19 down to 11, they all eat exceptionally well. And I'm going to tell you what they had this morning so far. Just, you know, it's a good question to ask people if you really want to put them on the spot.
Big time.
But out of those 4, 2 of them own it exceptionally well, and 2 are willing participants. My 11-year-old and 16-year-old son are willing participants. My 16-year-old daughter and 19-year-old son won't eat anything that has omega-6 oils in it, that has grain-fed beef, that is unbleached flour, that isn't wild fish. I mean, they're extremely fastidious, and that's them. You can't get them to eat it. I remember one time I was at a restaurant that I love, and there was this amazing sushi roll. I had it in Hawaii, and then they have the same restaurant in California. I was with my kids, and I wanted to order this roll, and they wouldn't because it had white rice in it instead of brown rice. Now, I know today there's arguments. Is white rice better? Is brown rice, depending on if you're animal-based, whatever. My point is they were taught that eat things as naturally as you can. So here's what my kids have eaten so far today, and it's 11 a.m. So every one of them has had raw dairy products from A2 milk, either Guernsey milk, goat milk, or water buffalo milk. My son Joshua, before he left the house at 6-something for football practice, had a smoothie with raw water buffalo milk, raw duck eggs, tropical fruit like passion fruit, dragon fruit, mango, pineapple. He had some scoops of collagen in it from Ancient Nutrition, multi-collagen protein, and organic maple syrup. And then he had a litany of supplements. I lay out everybody's supplements the night before for all my family. My 11-year-old had 16 ounces of raw milk in her supplements. My 2 16-year-olds had a bone broth protein smoothie of raw A2 milk and raw duck egg yolks. So I've been doing raw dairy since I was 19. It was a big part of my healing journey. And I have also been consuming raw eggs from healthy pasture raised, or in this case, our farm. And it's just been amazing. My kids will tell you they've had bone broth protein smoothies since they were a couple years old. And prior to that, my adopted kids, I made infant formula for them. And I can tell you, Tony, if you want to know if your health principles matter or they work, I like to say where the hummus meets the chips, make infant formula out of raw dairy for a 2-day-old that you adopt and bring home from the hospital. I had to really check myself for a minute. I'm saying, do I believe in this enough? Am I going to give her a 13 ingredient, starting with raw sheep milk and goat milk whey and cod liver oil, and the list goes on and on. And I've done that with all of my children that I had as infants, whether it was my biological son after Nikki was finished breastfeeding, I made them infant formula. My kids eat extremely healthy. I would say that it's a conscious omnivorous diet. A lot of things come from our farm. I'm sourcing fastidiously. I've ordered from local farms. I've been a member of illegal co-ops for my entire adult life. Tony, you'll like this. I'm disappointing on the dad jokes, but I went to Arizona giving a lecture in Tucson, and I found a raw dairy. And in Florida, they didn't have legal raw dairy. So I bought 12 quarts of raw milk, but I couldn't keep it cold on the flight home. So what I did, Tony, was I got the quarts of raw milk, I put kefir culture in them, and I cultured the dairy at 30,000 feet. I call it the Mile High Kefir Club, and I think I'm the only member.
I was going to say, how extensive is that club growing right now in membership, or is it still kind of hovering around one?
I've been a long time. So that's when you could bring liquids on the plane, obviously. So anyway,
let me ask you this.
So important. And I want to say one thing. So my two of my kids are athletes. 2 are more in music and drama. My oldest 2 are out of the house. But my daughter had an injury that the chiropractor we go to in Tennessee said that, and we had film, 999 out of 1,000 people would have torn their meniscus with the way your knee moved laterally.
Yes.
But because you have built your connective tissue, because you haven't taken antibiotics and weakened your ligaments and tendons, you are able to recover. And so we're seeing huge strides. My same daughter wrote every word backwards. Instead of doorbell, she said bell door. She had a lot of funny, we call them Alexisms, because her name's Alexis. She was healed of, we never called it dyslexia because we don't put names on our kids.
Same.
But my son, 16-year-old adopted, had terrible eczema when we brought him into our home, couldn't tolerate very many foods at all. So we've seen 6 different genetic pools, 6 different lineages respond to healing principles. Not all perfectly, but consistently, and when they follow them, they get the results.
That's what I wanted. That was the word I was going to pull out of that. It just seems like, the key to this is not thinking, oh, this is so easy. If it was so easy, then, same as you could run this phrase out in a ton of different directions in today's world. If it was so easy, well, then everybody would do it and we wouldn't have this massive chronic health challenge. But it is so worth it in the same breath, especially when it comes to our kiddos. And so the hardest part, moms and dads, is getting started. It really is. The hardest part is taking those first couple of steps. We share that with our kiddos as we teach these principles. It's harder, yes, to do things differently. We say the same thing to our kiddos, and I feel like that's been God's journey for my life. Even within chiropractic, it's like, oh, everybody's going this direction. And it's almost like that's a dead giveaway sign for me to be like, okay, well, I'm cutting left. They seem to be merging right. I'm taking a hardcore left. And so since that has been such a wonderful path to walk for us, you better believe we're really instilling this in our kiddos. And so I want parents to know that it 1,000% for you and for them gets easier as you go along and you build consistency into these going to the chiropractor habits. That's a commitment. You can't, adjust your own kiddos. So we know with busy schedules, we've got to really make sure that the value, the results, the consistency, the momentum is there for families to keep that schedule up. Chiropractic doesn't work, when you do it sporadically, right? No different than eating healthy or exercising or staying connected to your relationship with Jesus. It all builds on consistency. consistency, and it's harder in the beginning by a large margin than later on. But there are so many moments where it's worth it. Not only as we build health through, as Jordan's walking us through, let's call that nourishment. As we build health through biblical diet, healing foods, the appropriate supplements, which I want to get a little more granular next here, Jordan, as to exactly your favorite ones, your top ones you would send families to. And we're 100% going to send them into, if you got to read the Maker's Diet, you've got to read the probiotic book, because you want to talk about gold for your family that gives you not just the information and the reasons behind it, but action steps and strategies. Jordan can teach in such a real life, practical, not just like, oh, here's how, on a blog to do it. No, here's how you do it in real life. But you're building nourishment into your kiddos that will not only preserve and create health as you go along day to day, but it will prepare them for that sports injury. It will prepare them for the emotional fortitude that they will need to be a teenager, to go to college, to go into the world, right? And so there's nourishment that needs to be built up for raising healthy kids naturally. And in our world, we don't need to go deep down these roads on this episode, but there's neurology. God designed us with the nervous system being that foundational system that literally, once conception happens, it develops first. It will forever be the first most important system. And so we take this approach of natural health. We like to split it down to other inwards of nourishment and neurology, and really kind of separate them a lot of times when we're teaching and sharing with parents, so you can see that each individually is essential, but the two of them together is most. And I'm looking out. I've got my home studio here on the farm, and I'm looking right out this window on our farm. We're blessed. We live in this area that has a lot of hills. I think a lot of times people think of a farm as flat, right, in the Midwest. Well, God gave us this incredible property with all these rolling hills and all that. So there is an epic sledding hill literally right out the garage for the Ebel kids. And you know what's wonderful about all kids everywhere? And I know if you live in a place where it doesn't snow, you may not believe this. Bring your beach kid to the snow one time and put some gloves and boots on them and give them a sled. And your kids will love snow more than sand. When it's winter time, I cannot get my kids to come in off the farm. They're running right on the edge of frostbite and loving life with it, right? And we're loving it because they're outside being healthy. So right out this hill, 2 winters ago, Miss Elena, our spunky, goofy, she just actually had her 12th birthday yesterday. Happy birthday, baby girl. And she goes, and I'm a farm kid, Dad, right, Jordan? So I believe in the body's ability to be resilient. I believe in chiropractic's ability to, put it back together. Let's say something happens. And so we build, and it was totally me. We go to the bottom of the hill. First off, there's 2 trees down there. So we are aiming our sleds between, it's a good 10 to 12 feet. I mean, you got to really miss it to miss it. So in between the 2 trees, I build a ramp. I take my side-by-side with my blade and everything, and I build a ramp for the kids to go off of. And I'm thinking, this is a wonderful, right now moms are thinking, this is why dads put us all at risk. And you're not wrong at all to think that. And so Elena takes the first one up, and it's the perfect sledding day. It's that hard-packed, almost icy snow, so you can just really get rolling. Think Chevy Chase in that one movie. She goes launching off this incredible sled, ramp that I built, and just lands completely wrong on her foot. Long Tony story to fast forward to, 24 hours later, we're in the office of my buddy, the orthopedic, with x-rays and MRIs, and they end up running. Of course, they want to do a CT. We're like, no, you're good. Just, let's do films and MRI. And he's just staring at it, and he goes, there is no way she could break these 4 bones and the ligament is intact. He wanted to keep running imaging because he couldn't believe what he saw. You know what I mean? Because her nourishment, her ligaments, her resiliency was so strong. And so, long story of one kiddo, but to tell you, this stuff matters. I launched the practice with a phrase called building health from within. And we love to look at our kids' life, and we love to build daily. What we eat and what we do each day and what we don't eat and don't do each day really stacks up in that way. So what we try and do with our family, moms and dads listening, is we do not strive for perfection, but you better believe we go for consistency and building up that resiliency over the course of time. All right, Jordan, I know we're getting a little bit in overtime with this, or sorry, fourth quarter with this one. What I'd love to do is get a little extra granular favorite. So growing kiddos that need nourishment, need development, their bodies, their ligaments, their microbiome, their brain, all connected. What are the top 5 to 10 foods that you just want to get into them all the time?
You know what? Believe it or not, I'm going to have a hard time narrowing it down.
Totally.
Probably not 10 foods is probably good, but I prioritize protein. If you look at the word protein, it means of primary importance, or that which comes first. So my children eat daily animal foods, particularly red meat, the healthiest variety, organic, regenerative, grass-fed. They eat white meat, chicken, etc. They consume fish occasionally. They don't all like it very much. It's kind of how it goes. Raw dairy is a part of their life every day. Eggs, either pasture-raised chicken, duck, or turkey. Fun fact, turkey eggs are my favorite. They're just hard to come by. And we don't have enough turkeys. We're hopefully going to have more. Goose eggs are great too. We love avocado when it comes to sort of the plant kingdom. And we also, when it comes to fruits, we definitely like I would say the more exotic that have additional benefits. It's hard today because fruits are awesome, but they're all bred for high sugar, good taste, and they're largely hybridized, et cetera. But my kids eat lots of fruits. We do a lot of watermelon, particularly for my athlete kids, due to the citrulline content, helping with blood flow. We stock our freezers with frozen dragon fruit, passion fruit. I'm a big tropical fruit guy. We grow papaya indoors on our farm, which is the only papaya in Tennessee soil grown, I'm sure, in the entire state. We don't do a lot of grains. We do some veggies, but organic, highest quality veggies. And, I would say we're either gluten-free, or if we consume grains, we consume heirloom, properly prepared grains. So we have this sourdough whole grain einkorn bread that's like a 48-hour fermentation. And then this isn't a food, but my kids consume either collagen or bone broth protein from Ancient Nutrition every single day.
Yep.
We did make bone broth in the past. My 16-year-old son ate bone broth that was pureed for literally 3 years of his life after the formula. He loved it, still does. They consume collagen, connective tissue proteins every day because we are the first brothless generation that we're raising today. And it's not okay because connective tissue proteins, collagen from bone broth, et cetera, builds your gut, builds your immune system, all of your skin, hair, nails, joints, ligaments, tendons, and bones. So that's really, really critical for all of us. And really, that's kind of the basis. We really prioritize protein and fat. We cook with either tallow or grass-fed butter or ghee, sometimes coconut oil, and very, very rarely olive oil, et cetera. We would use that on foods, the highest quality olive oil, et cetera. But my kids are eating meat every day. They're eating some vegetables every day. They're eating fruits every day, raw dairy products, eggs, and it is about what they don't eat, but I really try to focus on what they do eat, because you can be gluten-free, dairy-free, whatever, and eat total junk. Nothing against gluten-free scones, but that's not going to build a healthy diet, right? So
no, it's not. No.
I really want to get, quote, superfoods in my kids all the time. And I scramble to get enough raw dairy. I scramble to get enough of the kind of eggs. Our eggs come from our farm where our birds are fed over 100 different nutrient-rich foods, actually from the food scraps from local health food stores, believe it or not, plus grass, grubs, and all the other that they eat. So those are kind of and I eat very similar to that. That's not different than my diet.
Yeah, but that's golden. But that's the key. That's what we want to keep honestly harping on with this podcast is, we're in this funky era, very exciting, awesome. We'd much rather have it this way, era of natural health and neurological health. I'm an expert in nervous system regulation and getting nervous systems repaired. So it's exciting that people are infrared saunaing and cold plunging and humming while walking barefoot and in nature, but so many people's nervous systems are so in such a state of disrepair that, this is an Iowa terminology. That's a little bit of, trying to throw a bucket onto a forest fire. And so you just have these things that we can go into. And when you look to get healthy, even through chronic disease, so my specialty of autism and epilepsy, people go to detail. They're looking for the fancy magical stuff when the magic is always in the basics. The magic is always in consistently getting these core elements of health in. And because if you don't have the core foundational in a good working place, then when you look to do these advanced healing measures, we're building our house upon the sand instead of the rock. And so core foundation. And I love that. I think too, so much of health content that's out there, it's like, let me tell y'all what not to do. And it's like, awesome. I have avoided everything under the sun. I'm not eating, I'm not breathing, I'm not drinking water, and I'm so stressed about it, but I'm taking it too far the other way. But the list of what not to do, it's definitely important. It's just not as important as the list of addition. I really think God designed us to move forward in exactly that word, in a forward manner, in addition, and focusing more on building in that way. And I love that so much. My last question into the granular there, though, is probiotics. So yes, what you mapped out is as close to what we can do, are doing all the time with our family as possible. So hard to get raw dairy. I feel like I got to get in line down there at our favorite store and be like, who wants free adjustment? I'll give you a free adjustment every time we meet. If I can slide up to the front of the line, I'll bring my portable table and trade some chiropractic for access to the gold here. Probiotics. What do we need to know about probiotics for our kiddos?
Well, I am a lifelong devotee in probiotics. I should say a adult long. So one of the main elements of my healing from inflammatory bowel disease was probiotics that we call soil-based organisms. Bacillus subtilis is probably the number one species of probiotic I recommend. Saccharomyces boulardii is a friendly yeast. These are indispensable for anyone, particularly children. The typical probiotics that are used are not getting it done. Now, fermented foods are great because they contain probiotics and postbiotics. So for me, it's really about probiotics and postbiotics, but I have consumed the same types of probiotics that I write about in the book you alluded to, The Probiotic Diet. I've consumed those since I was 19, so almost 30 years. When I'm overseas, I consume a double dose. When I'm not feeling great, I consume a double dose. But every day, day in, day out, every one of my family members gets those probiotics, including my four-legged puppy who's laying over here all of 8 pounds. She eats a stellar diet as well and was not vaccinated either, as you could probably imagine. Yeah. We have probiotics in so many formulations because they are indispensable to the daily diet. But you need to have probiotics that work, not those that are DOA or dead on arrival. Yeah. And I will borrow your analogy, Tony. I used to say it this way: hoping that a weak refrigerated probiotic can transform your gut is like trying to put out a forest fire with a squirt gun. So not even a bucket, a squirt gun. But I've been sharing that message for almost 30 years, and I'll never stop. But I do delve into more details on how to get probiotic-rich foods and supplements into your life with our new book called The Probiotic Diet, which is available where books are sold.
I want to just double tap on the probiotic diet. Being a pediatric expert, we look at health in its full foundational. When I say combination answer, like we talked about in the introduction, we really mean it. We want to have everything in working order. But when you get a family started on their healing journey, you got to start with the stuff that's going to give you the most healing bang for your buck. And so obviously nervous system focused chiropractic is there. You got to get a kiddo out of sympathetic dominance. But if there's one thing that just accelerates healing, if there's one thing that just absolutely expands healing in all the different directions to all the different systems, it is really through the gut. So the ranking system is that central and autonomic nervous system and then the gut. And those families that are on, and I really got to say this again, just like Jordan did, it's got to be the right kind of probiotics. You got to really, the book breaks it down 1,000 times better, because there's a multitude of ways to do that wonderfully. And even though, like omega-3s and like vitamin D and like probiotics, awesomely, they're in the news, they're mainstream. Well, yeah, with a grain of, Himalayan sea salt here, because it's like, yeah, but, and it's funny that I say, yeah, but here about this, because my kids are told they cannot start a sentence with the words well or but, because those are just about to infuse an excuse, right? If you start a sentence with well or but. So yeah, but is this combination of excuse making that is totally outlawed here. But I did just say yeah, but for a reason. You gotta really take a look at the quality, the potency, just honestly the job that the probiotic is going to get done. So parents out there, that's a do not skip that part of your healing journey. Please pick up the probiotic diet. We will link it in here. We're going to share it all over our Instagram, as well as the other things that Jordan was mentioning earlier. The talk and the message that he shared in California. I cannot wait to link that, and that's where I want to kind of take us home here, buddy man. I had on my notes here, and I'm so excited for it. So I would love to invite you right now to come back for a round two, because we didn't get into regenerative agriculture and sustainable farming, which is a dream conversation I want to have, because growing up on a conventional farm, I was the last of the weed pullers, buddy. So, nobody knew that, I grew up as a farm kid, my dad's right-hand man, as he made, which he did not want to, as he made that final shift from where we actually, took care of the soil and we pulled weeds out by hand, which is really good for you to do as a kid, even if you despise it. Way better than, sim farming on an iPad, walking up and down in the sun, getting exercise, being in the dirt, eating our lunch, sitting in the dirt and pulling weeds out. And then he made the switch. So I can't wait to learn from you on that and share with our community. But I also love that we didn't go there, because moms and dads and everyone listening in, well, we spent the bulk of this amazing podcast interview going through was where healing truly begins. And I didn't say this earlier when we had awesomely gone deep down the road of hope and faith, and its absolutely immeasurable role in healing for our kids and for ourselves. But I want to share something with you at the end of this. I would love, and my prayer is that this podcast generates, thousands, tens of thousands of new pediatric chiropractors, new naturopathic doctors, new mentors and community builders and healers. I don't know what initial you will seek, or if you choose to take the school route to go forward and help other families heal. But I would be remiss to not send this call to action at the end of this podcast. It says, moms and dads, another person I heard speak through our incredible mastermind we're in, Jordan, and you help lead, was Rory Vaden, who was talking about personal branding. And he said, you are best equipped to serve, to help, to serve the person you once were. And so moms and dads, and I think Jordan would, echo me in this call to action that says, when you do heal, when your child does heal and you make it through to the other side of the storm, follow that crazy spark, that crazy, seemingly crazy, it's not at all, download that God gives you that says, maybe I should leave this corporate job and go study this and do this. Maybe I should build a movement. Maybe I should lead others down this path. That's what our future generation of kids need. We need to take over healthcare. And the takeover of healthcare is not going to happen because me or Jordan are going to roll into a hospital and while they're, eating hospital food, give them a life-changing lunch and learn conversation. And the medical system's just going to up and raise their hand and go, you know what? You guys were right the whole time. Today, Tuesday, random Tuesday, we're making the shift. We'll do it. No, moms and dads, you'll change it. You want to change health for your kids. You want to change health for your grandkids. You have to be the spark, the catalyst, the tribe, the community that's going to get it done. That system will follow where the market shifts. And moms, you own the market. You make the decisions. You are the ones that are going out and getting empowered and taking care of your kiddos. And when you do individually, you'll save your child's life. You'll transform your entire family. And when we all do collectively, well, that's what we are here to set out to do with this podcast and with the PX Talks. So I don't want to just get your kiddos into our offices so we can help them heal. I want to get you into our office as a care advocate, an office manager, a future chiropractor. I will hire all of you. Go get, a game on, a job wanted, that's not a job wanted ad, right? That is a massive, pull and push to say, let's go get it done together. And Jordan, I want to ask this final question and then have you send us off on this one. What is your, to call it big is an understatement, what is your big, bodacious, God-sized, we'll come back on the dad jokes too. I do feel like we got so into it, we didn't leave ourselves room for dad jokes. So we're going to have to retool on the next one. But what is your just massive God-sized mission for the world? And what is the action that you are taking that you can invite our tribe to be a part of to get that done?
My personal mission statement is to heal the planet, feed the world, and eradicate disease. So bigger than any one person or maybe a million people can accomplish on their own. And for me, I have put my money where my mission is. And to your point, we have started a major project that is taking degraded soil and ultimately creating the world's healthiest ecosystem, food, etc. Because I believe that life's greatest challenges can be solved in a garden. We were born as mankind in a garden. We will return to that garden. And I believe in part, it is up to us to be stewards over this planet and watch as the land and the people are healed simultaneously. There's a great verse in Romans that says creation is groaning for the people of God to help aid in the regeneration. We can't destroy this planet and hope we're all going to go to heaven and find a new place when the Bible clearly says the new heaven and new earth is coming down from heaven to earth. And I believe that part of that renewal is our responsibility. Whether you theologically agree with me or not, the health of our bodies, our brain, our mind is directly related to the health of our soil. And we're taking our small sliver of Missouri and Tennessee and bringing back the principles that God created in the garden. And believe it or not, we can do that with our bodies. Well, we can begin to get better every day instead of worse. I'm excited, actually, right after this podcast, I'm jumping on a call to get an annual update from our research team on what improvements we have underground, what number of species of plants are emerging. Awesome. And every day, even though I'm not able to be on the farms as much as I'd like, I keep track of everything that's going on and exciting things are happening. And so I believe regeneration in body, mind, and planet is possible. I'm not asking everyone who's watching that has a child who needs help to go plant seeds, go buy farmland, because that's not what you need urgently. You need a miracle in your family. But ultimately, that's not going to happen unless we play a role either as producers or consumers of biblically, I would say, friendly, regenerative and organic local products. And we don't have time to share the details, but we will on a future episode. But I do believe that it's going to take an army of Josephs to help provide salvation physically and spiritually to this generation. And I've been called to be one of those. And I hope you have, Tony, and many who are listening, and it will take shape in whatever God's called you to do. But that's been my calling for a number of years now. I actually co-authored my only non-health book with a chiropractor, Dr. Pete Sulak, called The Joseph Blessing. And that's all about a generational calling to bring the world back to the way God intended in the name of Jesus for his kingdom and for his glory.
I love you. I appreciate you like none other. I am just so grateful that, we have this relationship. You took this time to be with us, and I cannot wait to get to know you more and share your incredible journey, wisdom, companies, products. You guys, if you have not read those books, get those. If you have not got collagen from Ancient Nutrition into yourself and your kiddos, it is every morning, every day for years around here, and many more incredible products as well. Get moving into action to these things that Jordan shared with us today. I can't thank you enough, buddy. I can't wait to do round 2 and do many more things together. Really appreciate you. Praying for a wonderful day and I know how, just, into the dirt you are with this new mission and new vision. And you need to know we're praying for you every single day, and we can't wait to see it be achieved and accomplished and all the good it will do. Have a great day, my friend. And everybody listening, go subscribe, share this podcast. We love you for listening. Thank you so much. Hope Answers Drug-Free Help right here on the Experience Miracles podcast. We'll see you on the next one.